In the beginning, when the world was still young and freshly emerged from the lost paradise, two brothers were born who would forever change the course of human history: Cain and Abel. As the sons of Adam and Eve, they carried not only the legacy of the first couple on earth, but also the weight of an existence marked by original sin. The Garden of Eden was no more, only a hostile world remained, where sweat and toil were the only currency for survival. What was once a gift had now become a daily struggle. And in this new reality, the brothers grew up, shaped by a destiny they did not choose. From a young age, Cain and Abel learned that the world was a place of sacrifice and hard work. But something invisible also grew with them: the seed of envy, anger, and rejection. Cain, the firstborn, felt the weight of his parents' past resting on his shoulders. After all, he was the first child of their mistake, the first generation marked by the curse of sin. Abel, on the other hand, seemed to carry a different lightness. Did this foreshadow an unequal destiny between the two? Or had Cain, from the very beginning, already tasted the bitter flavor of rejection, even without fully understanding why? The world had changed, and with it, human relationships began to take shape. The first bond of brotherhood in history was far from a tale of friendship and camaraderie. Deep down, something darker and more profound was fermenting between Cain and Abel. Did Adam and Eve's past have something to do with it? After all, if God expelled them from paradise for their mistake, did he also have favorites among their children? A dangerous thought, but one that, sooner or later, would consume one of the brothers. From an early age, the brothers followed different paths. Cain dedicated himself to the land, becoming a farmer. He plowed the soil, sowed seeds, and harvested crops. His hands knew the weight of hard work, the frustration of pests, and the challenge of dealing with ungrateful land. Abel, meanwhile, became a shepherd, guiding flocks, observing the natural cycles of life, depending less on his own effort and more on divine provision. Two distinct destinies, two ways of surviving, but also perhaps two opposing worldviews. And without realizing it, this simple detail began to plant the seed of envy and rejection. But what if these choices were not just professional decisions? What if they reflected something deeper? Was Cain, the farmer, someone who believed in his own effort as the only path to redemption, while Abel, the shepherd, trusted more in divine providence? It may seem like a subtle detail, but perhaps here lay the beginning of a rivalry that would soon take tragic proportions. Because, deep down, it wasn't just about what they did. It was about what they symbolized. And Cain's heart began to grow heavy, tasting the bitterness of comparison. The brothers didn't know it, but their choices were already shaping their destinies. Cain's land demanded effort, sweat, and patience. But what if the fruit of that effort wasn't enough? Meanwhile, Abel simply guided his flock and watched the animals grow. It was as if nature itself favored one over the other. Was it fair? Cain began to feel a discomfort, a feeling hard to name, but one that would soon explode irreversibly. What followed would not just be a disagreement between brothers. It would be humanity's first act of betrayal against itself. The day came when Cain and Abel would offer sacrifices to God. It was a crucial moment, an act of devotion that revealed the heart of each. Cain brought the fruit of his harvest, something he had cultivated with sweat and effort. Abel, on the other hand, brought the firstborn of his flock, the best of his animals. To human eyes, both were offering something valuable. But when God looked at the offerings, something unexpected happened. He accepted Abel's but rejected Cain's. And in that instant, a dangerous flame ignited within the older brother. Why? This question hammered in Cain's mind. Hadn't he brought his harvest with effort? Wasn't it the fruit of his hard work? What made Abel's sacrifice more worthy than his? Was it a matter of favoritism? Or was something deeper at play? Anger began to grow within him, fueled by the feeling of rejection. After all, if God didn't accept his offering, what did that say about him? The envy, once silent, now turned into a crushing weight. But what if it wasn't just about the offering? What if the real problem lay in Cain's heart? God saw beyond the material sacrifice. He saw the intention behind the gift. Perhaps Abel had given his best with humility, while Cain had merely offered something without real commitment. Yet, for Cain, none of that mattered. All he saw was an unjust verdict. And that feeling grew, transforming into something dangerous. something that would soon spiral out of his control. The rejection of his offering struck a deep blow to Cain's soul. But was it just envy he felt? Perhaps there was something greater behind his fury. Since Eden, God's favor seemed unattainable, a gift that required obedience and genuine sacrifice. Abel seemed to have understood that. Cain, on the other hand, felt wronged. How could God prefer one brother over the other? Wasn't the curse on his family enough? Shouldn't divine favor be a reparation for all that Adam and Eve had lost? Cain's anger grew because, deep down, he didn't just want recognition. He wanted revenge against a feeling of exclusion that had tormented him since birth. Had God rejected him just as he had rejected his parents by expelling them from Eden? Did he carry the weight of a mistake he didn't even commit? He wasn't just angry at Abel. He was furious at God, at existence itself, at the feeling that no matter what he did, it would never be enough. And here the story takes a dangerous turn. Because when someone feels worthless, like they'll never be accepted, something inside breaks. Jealousy mixes with anger, and punishment seems inevitable. But what if there was a warning, one last chance to avoid tragedy? Perhaps a divine alert that could prevent the worst. Cain didn't know it yet, but that chance was about to come. The question was, would he listen? Or was it already too late? Before Cain sank completely into his own darkness, God gave him a warning. Why are you angry, and why has your face fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted? But if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door. Its desire is contrary to you, but you must rule over it. This wasn't just a simple reprimand. It was a direct alert. Something terrible was about to happen, and the only person who could prevent it was Cain himself. But did Cain truly listen? His heart was already too heavy, intoxicated by rejection and jealousy. God offered him a path to avoid tragedy, but anger had already consumed his reason. And the worst part? He didn't want to admit that the problem lay within him. It was easier to blame Abel, to blame God, to blame fate. Sin was at his door, hungry, waiting for the right moment to dominate his mind. And deep down, Cain knew, if he wasn't careful, something irreversible would happen. This was the last chance. God didn't stop Cain by force, didn't punish him immediately. He simply warned him, leaving the choice in his hands. Could he contain his anger? Resist the temptation of revenge? If he had chosen repentance, the story would have been different. But Cain was blinded by the desire for punishment, by the need to make Abel pay. And when a heart reaches that point, only one thing remains to happen.
What if you could attract everything you desire? Success, prosperity, and the life of your dreams are within your reach. Discover how to use the law of attraction the right way and transform your reality once and for all. Access now. The link is in the description and the pinned comment.
Cain couldn't ignore the fury consuming him. The divine warning echoed in his mind, but anger had already taken over. It was then that he called Abel to the field. An innocent invitation? No. It was a trap. There, far from any eyes, far from any interference, envy turned into a brutal act. Cain attacked his brother with uncontrollable rage, marking the ground with the first spilled blood in human history. An unprecedented act of betrayal. What went through Cain's mind in that moment? Perhaps he believed that by eliminating Abel, he would finally gain the recognition he desired. But as soon as the act was committed, something changed. The silence of the field now weighed differently. Abel's blood didn't simply mix with the earth, it cried out. And deep down, Cain knew nothing would ever be the same. His anger brought no relief, only a profound emptiness. Punishment would not be long in coming. In that moment, Cain didn't just take his brother's life. He shattered something greater, the bond between humanity and God. The first homicide in history carried a cosmic weight. Humanity had taken an irreversible step toward darkness. But what Cain didn't know was that his judgment was yet to come. And when God called his name, he would have to face not only the crime he committed, but the consequences that would follow. Then came the question that thundered like a storm. Where is Abel, your brother? God didn't need the answer. He already knew. But Cain, still burdened by the weight of his crime, tried to evade. I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper? A blatant lie, a futile attempt to escape guilt. But Abel's blood cried out from the ground, demanding justice. And Cain would soon learn that there is no escape for those who shed innocent blood. The judgment was swift and severe. God declared that the land, once merely ungrateful, would now become an eternal torment for Cain. No seed of his would prosper. No harvest would thrive. He would wander aimlessly, a restless wanderer without a home, without peace, without rest. The land that once sustained his life now rejected him. The punishment wasn't just physical, it was spiritual, emotional, profound. The rejection he so feared had finally come to pass, but not in the way he expected. And now, what was left for Cain? No land, no family, no protection. Fear consumed him. Anyone could kill him, anyone could avenge Abel's blood. But, surprisingly, God did something unexpected. He placed a mark on Cain, a sign that no one could touch him. Justice or mercy? A divine paradox that still intrigues many today. But Cain, even spared from death, was not spared from loneliness. His punishment was to live, but far from everything and everyone. When Cain heard his sentence, despair took over. He would not only lose his land and his harvest, but would live as a fugitive, always fearing for his life. "My punishment is greater than I can bear," were his words. For the first time, the man who took his brother's life felt the weight of his actions. But instead of condemning him to immediate death, God did something unexpected. He placed a mark on him, ensuring no one would kill him. But what was this mark? Many have tried to decipher this mystery over the centuries. Was it a visible mark on his body? A stigma everyone recognized? Or something deeper, a spiritual weight that kept aggressors at bay? The fact is that Cain was protected, even after his crime. A murderer receiving mercy. It seems contradictory, doesn't it? But perhaps that's the point. God showed that, despite punishment, vengeance was not the answer. Even the first murderer in history was not simply eliminated. Yet, living under the mark of Cain was no privilege. It was a reminder. He would wander without land, without purpose, without peace. With every step, he would carry the weight of his actions. Perhaps the greatest punishment wasn't death, but survival itself. And so, Cain departed, exiled, with his invisible or visible mark, with his curse and uncertain destiny. But this wasn't the end of his story. For even far away, he would leave his mark on the world in another way. Exiled, wandering, and burdened by his crime, Cain roamed the world. But his story didn't end there. Over time, he found a place for himself and built something unexpected, a city. The first murderer in humanity became the first founder of a civilization. Was this an attempt at a new beginning? Or just further proof that man, even estranged from God, sought to leave his mark on history? The city was named Enoch, after Cain's son. But there was something strange about this new world. If before humanity knew only tribes and family bonds, now an organized society emerged, a reflection of the human desire for dominion and permanence. But could a city built on the legacy of betrayal and blood prosper? Cain's descendants grew, and with them, new ambitions, new conflicts, new shadows looming over humanity's future. The irony? Cain, who rejected God and chose to forge his own path, laid the foundation for something that would define human destiny: great civilizations. But these societies were born carrying the same weight as the first murder: envy, anger, punishment, rejection. The spirit of Cain never disappeared. It simply spread. And his city. It was the first step toward a world where man would try to build greatness, often without realizing he carried the mark of his own sin. The story of Cain and Abel isn't buried in the past. Humanity's first homicide echoes to this day. After all, how often has envy destroyed relationships? How often has someone felt they would never be enough? Cain killed Abel because he believed God's rejection was unjust, but deep down, he never accepted his own fault. And that's the great tragedy. When someone blames others instead of looking inward, the cycle of anger and punishment never ends. We live in a world where rivalry, jealousy, and the pursuit of recognition still fuel conflicts. How many Cains exist today? People who, instead of confronting their own feelings, turn against others. But there are also Abels, those who pay the price for being accepted, for doing what's right, for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. History repeats itself. The spirit of Cain is still present, whether in crimes, corruption, wars, or even the small betrayals of daily life. But the most important question is, which role do we choose? Will we be like Cain, allowing resentment to dominate us? Or will we learn that true sacrifice isn't in what we offer, but in what we carry within us? The first murder in history wasn't just a crime. It was a reflection of something that, if left unchecked, will always lead to destruction. The question that remains is, are we repeating Cain's steps, or learning the lesson he never did? The story of Cain and Abel isn't just a tale from the past. Humanity's first murder was only the beginning of a cycle that still repeats itself: envy, rejection, vengeance. But have we learned anything from it? How many times has jealousy destroyed relationships? How many times has the pursuit of recognition led someone to make irreversible decisions? Cain believed that eliminating Abel would solve his problem, but in the end, he only condemned himself further. And today, how many people still try to succeed by destroying others? The question that remains is, will we continue to repeat this mistake, or will we finally understand that the real battle isn't against others, but against ourselves? If this story made you reflect, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Here, you'll uncover more hidden truths and lessons that could change your life. Turn on notifications and continue this journey with me. Because this story isn't over. It still repeats itself every day.